Have you ever stopped to wonder how your phone knows it's you just by looking at your face? Or how some cars can just drive themselves? Well, the answer to all that is a seriously powerful piece of technology called a neural network. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it all works.
I mean, it really does feel like magic, doesn't it? But it's not. The secret is technology that can learn, that can adapt, and that can make decisions all on its own. And right at the very heart of that technology is the neural network.
So where did this incredible idea even come from? Well, you might think it was dreamed up in some high-tech computer lab, but the inspiration actually came from biology. That's right. Engineers looked to the most complex and efficient computer on the planet for ideas, the human brain.
Now, to be clear, the goal was never to build an exact digital copy of a human brain. Not at all. The real mission was to copy its amazing ability to spot patterns, to make sense of messy information, and, most importantly, to learn from its own experiences.
And this slide just perfectly illustrates that core idea. So over on the left, you've got a real biological neuron. It has dendrites to receive signals, a cell body to process them, and an axon to send a new signal out. Now look to the right. That's the artificial version. You've got inputs, a little processor in the middle, and an output. It's a beautifully simple model of its biological counterpart. So now that we've got the big picture inspiration, let's zoom way in. Let's look at the single, fundamental piece that makes this whole thing tick, the artificial neuron itself. Okay, I know, this diagram might look a little intense at first glance, but trust me, it's our roadmap. Every single part here has a pretty simple job to do, and we're going to walk through them one by one, starting right at the beginning with the information coming in. First up are the inputs. This is just the raw information that the neuron gets to work with. So let's say a neural network is trying to spot a cat in a photo. For the very first neurons in the network, the inputs would literally be the color values of each and every pixel in that picture.
Now we get to maybe the most important concept of all, weights. See, not all information is equally important. Weights are just little numbers that tell the neuron how much attention to pay to each input. And here's the real secret sauce. The entire process of learning is just the network tweaking these weights over and over again until it gets really good at solving a problem. In a way, these weights, they are the network's memory.
And finally, there's something called the activation function. Think of it like the neuron's bouncer or its decision maker. After it's listened to all the inputs and considered their weights, this little function decides if the total message is important enough to pass along to the next neuron in the line. And it's not just a simple on or off switch. It can also decide how strongly to pass that message on.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got our parts list, inputs, weights, and an activation function. Now let's put it all together and see how they actually work in a process that's called the forward pass.
It all boils down to this simple but super powerful four-step process. First, it multiplies each input by its weight. Remember, that's how it gauges importance. Second, it sums all of those weighted inputs together along with another little value called a bias that helps fine-tune things. Third, it takes that grand total and runs it through the activation function. And finally, step 4, it produces an output, a signal that gets sent to the next neuron. And that's it. That's the fundamental calculation that happens millions, sometimes billions of times inside a network.
You see, one single neuron is just a simple little calculator, but the real magic, just like in our own brains, happens when you connect millions or even billions of them together in complex layers.
And this is where you get that buzzword you've probably heard, deep learning. And honestly, it's not as scary as it sounds. All deep really means is that a neural network has lots of these layers stacked on top of each other. Anything more than a couple of layers, and you're officially in deep territory. And that depth is what lets them learn incredibly complex things.
And this slide right here shows you why that depth is a total game changer. You know, with older types of machine learning, a human programmer had to literally tell the computer what features to look for, like look for sharp edges or look for circular shapes. But a deep network? It figures all of that out on its own. The first layer might learn to see basic lines. The next layer combines those into shapes like eyes and a nose. And the layer after that puts it all together to see a face. It builds understanding from the ground up, all by itself.
So let's bring all of this back to the real world. Where are these powerful deep networks actually showing up in your life? Well, the short answer is pretty much everywhere. They're the brains inside self-driving cars. They're helping doctors find diseases in medical scans way earlier than before. They're what lets you talk to Siri or ChatGPT. And yep, they are absolutely behind the scenes curating your Netflix queue and your Amazon recommendations. This tech is driving innovation in almost every industry you can think of.
And that's the thing. As this quote says, this stuff isn't science fiction anymore. It's not a someday technology. It's here, it's now, and it's fundamentally changing the world we live in.
But for all of their amazing power, for all the incredible things they can do, there's a fascinating and really important challenge that comes along with them.
It's something known as the black box problem. Think about it. When you have millions of these little neurons all adjusting their own weights, the whole decision-making process becomes almost impossibly complicated for a human to follow. So we can see the input, the medical scan, and we can see the final output, the diagnosis, but we can't really ask the network to explain why it made that choice. We know that it works, but we often can't explain exactly how.
And that leaves us with one last, and really big, question to think about. As we start to rely on these AIs for more and more critical decisions, diagnosing diseases, driving our cars, deciding who gets a loan, how much does it matter if we can't fully understand their reasoning? It's not just a technical puzzle, it's honestly one of the biggest ethical questions we have to face as this incredible technology keeps evolving.